Hello and welcome to this month's ID update. And I think for the first time ever that all actually worked. And we are live across YouTube, Substack and even LinkedIn. Look at that. That's
LinkedIn.
As I was making a joke of before we went live, LinkedIn has to have its own special button to make that work. Because why would it not? But we are here. Thank you for joining us. I can see we've got people across, I think we've got people across all three platforms. So hello, welcome. Unfortunately, I can't see the Substack chat at all. So if you can, Heidi, you'll need to keep an eye on that one for us. But thank you. I can see people have joined us on Substack, but I have no way as the host of viewing the chat. So that's possibly a feature update coming their way. Anyway, all of that stuff out of the way, it has already been a month, which just feels nuts.
I know. Well, we do only have 30 days of April, and technically it ends next week. So
yes, yeah, no, that's all very true. But I don't know. It feels like it went very quickly. Anyway,
agreed.
Yeah. But so our two big topics, I guess, for this episode are conferences and probably events is a better way to put that, because I know an increasing number of conferences refuse to use the word conference. They're not a conference; they are some other event type name here, which I think is a bit of a shame. This is a bit like when we say, "Oh, it's not training anymore; it's learning," because training has a bad reputation. It's like, right, but is it the same thing? And is that an accurate name for what it is? But hey, we'll dig into that perhaps a little bit later, and then we're going to have a bit of a tech chat about some of the latest acronyms and magical phrases that are popping up, and really, I guess, about how they're not magical, and how we can talk about them in a more serious way. So I guess to kick us off, Heidi, you came to me with both these topic ideas this month. I have done no work.
I did.
So should we start with conferences and events? And so I think the start of this was how to get the most out of them. But I think it would also be good to have a chat about kind of, the behind the curtain stuff that we've both been involved in over the years. And the question, I guess, that always comes up is how do I get into the world of speaking at conferences? So maybe we can touch on that a little bit. Yeah. But shall we start at the beginning?
Absolutely. Yeah. And my idea was just, as we get into conference season, if you will, kind of the May through November time frame, I see a lot of people like Lauren Waldman post about how, we need to make sure that we're getting things out of these conferences, because a lot of times it's like, I'm all for direct instruction, but like 3 days full of back-to-back direct instruction, and we're learning designers, it just seems to be a little bit of a miss, and so we're all kind of scrambling because nobody kind of wants to change the format to then say, okay, then how do we get something out of this? If we can't change the format, how do we then benefit from it?
Absolutely. And that's, I think that's so much of a challenge. I mentioned there's people changing away from the name of conferences, right? And I think this is kind of partially where that comes from. That sense of, conferences you go to and you get spoken at and it's all lectures and all this kind of thing. And I've got a couple of things for that. It's like, first of all, we shouldn't be so quick to dismiss lectures. Like, everyone sort of says, it's lectures. It's a sage on the stage. And we're very immediately negative about this. I have been to some phenomenal lectures. And it's not because they were 15 minutes. I've been to 3-4 hour lectures that we got to the end of and we were like, is that it? Can we have some more? You know,
sure.
A really good presentation or lecture or whatever can be fantastic. It can be both useful, engaging, fun, all that good stuff. Bad presenters and bad content are bad in all formats. Whether it's a roundtable, a festival, an e-learning, a virtual experience, if someone doesn't know what they're doing on stage and isn't sharing something of value that puts the user first, the format doesn't matter. That said, there are problems, I guess, with some of the... Again, I'm not always convinced it's actually a problem with the setup of the events. I think a lot of us never really think about how we're going to consume an event. I speak to a lot of people who buy a ticket, and tickets can be pricey, right? That's a different thing in of itself. But then they feel like because they've paid that ticket price, the way they can get value is by going to every session they can physically cram in across the day or 2 days or week. And I'm not sure about you, Heidi, but I try and be quite selective. I try to say kind of like which sessions here, and this is probably before I decide to go, I try to say like which sessions here do I feel like I would have missed out on and missed something valuable to me and my development if I don't go. And those are the ones that I attend. And if there's a 3-hour gap in the middle of the day where there is nothing that I feel like I really need to attend, well then what else could I fill that time with? Is there an expo hall so I can have a general idea of what's going on the vendor side of things? Maybe I don't want to be sold to, but it's still a good idea to keep an idea of which companies still exist.
Hide your badge.
Or, who's bought who, that kind of thing. But I think that, I guess that would be my first thing there, is that the overload can be caused by conference design, but it can also be caused by us not considering how we're going to interact with this event and the opportunities. I'm not sure, so when you're going to the event, do you do something similar or do you have a different approach?
Yeah, so I actually aim to attend as few sessions as possible, which I know is very, and for the same reason, right? Is because at some point, and I didn't always do that. I mean, the first time I went to a conference, the first time I went to DevLearn, I tried to do that. I tried to cram them all in, and I just tried to go to ones that sounded interesting. Yeah. And by doing that, I went to a couple that I ended up walking out of because they were not good quality. And I was like, man, why did I pick standing room only in this room to hear something that I didn't need to hear, or, so I'm a lot more selective. And I find that, like most people, the conversations that I have outside of the actual sessions have benefited me more as a professional, have led to more client-based or business relationships for me personally with my business. So the other things that are going on outside of the expo and outside of the sessions have consistently been more valuable, is what I'll say.
I would agree with that. And I feel like most events have fringe events around them. So a really good example is next week in the UK is Learning Technologies. And for the first time in 10 years, I'm completely dodging the Learning Technologies event. I will actually be around in the area, but I'm just hopping from fringe event to fringe event over the couple of days. Sort of like a lunchtime and brunch event there and an evening event here, because from that I will get, these really solid distilled conversations. I'll connect with the kind of people that I want to connect with, have the chats that I want to have, but I won't have to, 1, pay a massive entry fee, and 2, deal with an expo, because having gone the last 10 years, I'm good. I know what is going to be in the expo. I know what everyone's going to be screaming. I don't need any further stuffed animals, and I'm good for notebooks. So I really don't have and I'm not buying anything. So I have no reason to go. For me, those Fringe events give me what I need. They give me the connection to the industry, the opportunity to have a chat with people. And I really appreciate what Lauren said there in the chat, actually, to consider the cost of attending. Now, the cost of attending a conference varies place to place, country to country, and kind of depending on how senior you are, or how senior you're earning at any given time. But I think especially now we are trying to be quite careful as an industry with budgets in-house, which typically have been quite quick to sign these things off. And certainly if you're freelance or small business, you're being very careful with that spend, right?
Of course.
And there's a big variation in what conferences cost. I was kind of blown away when I looked at the price of a DevLearn ticket or an ATD ticket. But then equally, I know plenty of people who, when they look at the conference tickets here in the UK for any of the big conferences like Learning Technologies, World of Learning, that's too much for them. So I think it's the same everywhere. But then we've got to look at other types of events. Often when we say conferences, we talk about those big, the country's leading event for, and 6,000 people will attend over 2 days, and they're great, they're awesome, but they're not for everyone. And there's a lot of value to be had at smaller events. Prime example, start of this year, we had a conference in London run by Andrew Jacobs, and it was specific to podcasting for learning. And it was a one-day event, 65, 70 people plus speakers and attendance. Absolutely fantastic. First time it's run. 160, 170 quid a ticket. Very reasonably priced, and a really valuable day. Still a long day, still tiring, still a bit kind of, wow, that's a lot of information, but actually just smaller, more accessible to most people. You've also, and very niche, everyone there was interested in podcasting. You didn't have to do I want to speak to you? Do we have the same interests? No, we do.
Sure. Yeah.
And I wonder if more events like that might see us around some of those issues.
Yeah. Well, and I think to your point too, as for example, I went to the LN Connect conference in London a couple years ago, right? Back in 2024, because it was the same to go there and do that as it was for me to go to one of the big conferences, right? It was the same cost. And so for me, I thought, well, let me go to this smaller venue with a bunch of people that I know that I've never met in real life, that it would be amazing to go and meet and connect with. Then it would be for me to be surrounded by a bunch of people I've never met before, who I may or may not see somebody that I know who might be from the computer, but it's hard to tell when someone's head is a little, the more people that come to the events, I think they get a little bit, they definitely get difficult for me because I'm introverted, but can you travel somewhere and can you go to a smaller conference, like you're saying, for that same amount of money that you would have spent anyway and get something more out of it?
And get a totally different take. So, like, for instance, first week of May, we're going to Karlsruhe in Germany, where LearnTech happens. Not Learning Technologies, LearnTech. Weirdly, completely different conferences run by different people. But that kind of mainland Europe take on the worlds of education and corporate learning and development is in a wildly different place than where we are in the UK. I always kind of say you've got kind of the US position, the Europe position, and the UK kind of gets pulled somewhere in between the two. We adopt a lot from both sides, but it's fascinating to see a very different, much more demanding. Like when someone asks you a question, you're going to answer it, or they are going to ask it again. And you are going to provide the clarity they are looking for. And it's really good. But the time is given to that. The format lends itself to that. As a speaker, you are briefed to expect questions that are not just, And what's the one thing I could do to get started? Which is a great kind of question, but we all know it's quite high level. You know,
Sure.
there is the expectation of, so where are you getting that from? And where can I read about that? And where can I learn? Do you have a case study that I can, there's this real desire to get into the detail, which is fantastic and very rarely the case. I find at events, unless it's really supported like it is there. And similarly, I will go to the expo there because when we went last year, IKEA was there with their furniture.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Talking about the importance of the environment in which you learn.
Okay.
They are much more clued into the fact that actually it's not just about how you hammer information into people's brains as if that somehow works. It's not just,
right.
There will be, of course, the e-learning authoring tools and the LMSs and blah, blah, but there were also, Canon was there talking about printers for printed materials to get high quality. IKEA was there talking about furniture. I always forget the company name, but the people who make very high-end desk chairs were there. Herman Miller were there. Sorry, there we go. Talking about again office furniture and desk chairs. It was phenomenal seeing this connection being made between environment and outcomes. That you've never seen. Oh, I've never seen that, I should say, at any of the big UK conferences. There could be a very good commercial reason for that. I don't know, but it was very good to see, very different. So if you do have the option to travel, it's amazing how much a different perspective can kind of bring to you. And in fact, IKEA have a super professional L&D department. They do, actually, yes.
Clearly.
They do an amazing job. Interestingly, initially that's what I thought it had to be, that they had to be there with L&D case studies or something, but they were like, no, chairs, rugs, tables, you need them.
Ergonomics.
Your training room should not be the ugliest looking place in the world. So that's a really good point. And there was one chap there talking about, and we may have chatted for quite a long time, but about acoustics and soundproofing training rooms, not just to stop getting out, but so that there's not aggressive echo in the room and that it feels comfortable but not like dead space. It's like, oh, this is fantastic. Yeah, most people will never get to do that. I do get that. Most of us don't have a budget to build a training space, but it at least got people thinking about this stuff matters. It's not just about how quickly can this AI workflow take this PDF and turn it into a course. It is in fact about, okay, and where will they do that course and how will they feel and what can they see and hear and all this sort of, it's really, really good. I love that event, but the point was more broad. Different events, unusual events that aren't specifically for L&D, I think can be really valuable.
Yeah, agreed. Lauren says you need to plug your upcoming IDTX event.
Deliberately weren't doing that. That always feels a little bit iffy.
I know.
Yeah, it's everyone I think who's joining this probably does know that I do have a what do they call it, some skin in the game for this, as it were, I guess. IDTX is running its first in-person event, and it's been fascinating thinking about these things, I've got to say, because I've been very lucky. I spent for 3 years, I organised the LN Connect conference. That was really fantastic, plus a bunch of their other events, mastery days and workshops and social evenings and networking events. And then I've also got to do some speaker selection over the years and currently for a couple of the bigger conferences. And it is fascinating how once you see that side of it, you do start to think a little bit more about kind of not all of this is design error. Some of this is just, conferences have to walk this very, very difficult line between being valuable, being for the people who attend, but also needing money to survive. And some people, IDTX is a passion project. It doesn't need to make profit. But most organizations don't operate on that basis, They do have to be able to make money. And it's not as easy, I think, as people tend to think, to make a conference profitable and really valuable and have the right mix of speakers and have the speakers that you particularly want. Certainly the struggle I always have is everyone wants to see. I mean, everyone wants something different from speakers. For one thing, you can't
Sure.
please everyone; it's impossible. But we know that, for instance, the gender mix. I was chatting to some people. Oh, it's really good that you've got a good gender mix here, and you've got a good gender mix there. And like on the webinars, you've always got there seems to be a really good mix. It's like, yes, it's really difficult. And I from an organisational perspective, just to put tote cards on the table. If I message a middle-aged man and say there's a speaking opportunity, I will have a response within 20 minutes. And it will almost always be a yes. The reverse is not true, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but from an organising, if you've got 100 speakers to find, and you're getting into the last-minute rush, which almost all events do, because that's the way it goes in the world,
Sure.
there is a, if we want to see a good mix and people from different backgrounds, then people need to put their hands up and say yes. And I know that some people consistently do, but it is that they're, and I would never say, therefore we have to excuse anything that isn't balanced. We don't. It's harder work. Now, again, small events, Andrew, phenomenal mix of people. I like to think I generally get it right, or at least get it approaching right. Same with most small events. Big events where basically it's someone's job and they're probably hosting 20 conferences that year across different industries. They don't know everyone in the industry all that well. They aren't going to spend 3 times as long to try and get that balance. So I think we as an industry have to, and this isn't a case of if you're not seeing yourself on stage, it's your own fault. This is as an industry, we need to have a think about how we get to a point where more people from more backgrounds, and not just people who, let's face it, largely look like me, are putting their hands up and coming to the front saying, I would like to speak. And this, I find this exists a lot more in in-house professionals, because consultants have already had to almost do that work of, I'm going to put myself forwards.
Sure.
In-house professionals, it's very difficult to find people who are willing to be like, yes, I'm going to come and talk.
It also tends to be very political here in the U.S. I've served on one of the biggest conferences selection committee, and it's incredibly political. And I've never been accepted to speak at any of the conferences that I've applied to speak at the U.S. And people are always shocked by that. They're like, "But you've had a podcast, and you have no problem with speaking, right? And like we've seen you speak, and we've enjoyed you speak." And I'm like, yes, but like whatever it is, either it's the topics that I submit, or it's the fact that I'm not an up and comer. Like I sat in a room and listened to people be like, well, who's this person? I keep seeing their name. I keep hearing their name on LinkedIn. We should find out if they have a proposal. Like it's incredibly political, right? And it's in the US, there's a lot of free and unpaid labor that goes into making these events happen that is really, really not reciprocated when it should be. And yeah, like I had a very bad experience. I had a very, very negative experience, and there's a conference I won't go to now because of how bad my experience was.
That's fascinating. Do you know what? It's really interesting, because I've got to say, like, I'm doing speaking selection at the moment for a big event, and there is no committee. And I think whenever there is a committee, I worry, because that is committees do not generally make good decisions. They tend to make really bad, really slow, and ultimately compromised decisions. And I think the best events are where someone is empowered to go, yes, we're going to do that. And maybe that's a risk. Maybe that person's, maybe they might come out and say, burn it all down and start, they might really go for it. But we have to be willing to take that risk if we're going to put on a great event. Right. The other thing, and this is maybe a reflection point, because a lot of people will say, you say, oh, what do you want? They go, oh, I want to see this topic and that topic. I want to see something really in depth about learning transfer. I've had enough about sessions about AI, is the classic one at the minute, right? And yet every talk about AI will be packed to the gills, and the session on, a complex learning transfer element or something like that will be half empty. I hate to say it, but we love
It's true.
conference junk food. We've
Yes.
if we don't want every other session to be AI related, stop showing up to the AI sessions, because there is no way to run a conference that does not involve saying, what will people show up for? And even with my own, with my IDTX, there were a couple of topics that I thought, I think they would be really useful to explore. They would help the industry a lot right now. I couldn't do them this time because I've got to be able to sell tickets. And I can't simultaneously get people to buy into attending an event, travelling, staying overnight potentially, and trying to persuade them that this topic is important to them even though they don't want to talk about it. Like, that is, you can't do that. That's not the role of a conference, I don't think. Or at least if it is, I haven't figured out how to do it.
Sure.
So I think there's a challenge there for us to think, when you're next attending a conference, are you attending things that are different, challenging, genuinely useful? Or are you attending your friends' sessions? The sessions about the topics that are big today, but are probably going to be gone tomorrow? Are you sort of trend following, and are you just going to it because you want to be able to post on this topic on LinkedIn? I see a lot of that. And, if that's how you want to interact with the conference, that's totally fine. But understand that how you interact with conferences is how conferences are then shaped.
Yes.
Because those numbers are watched at incredible detail. Looking back at last year for the event that I'm doing selection for, we know pretty much how many people went to every session. And the ones that were half empty, those topics aren't coming back. And some of those topics were good topics. They're things that I think I went to that. I was one of those people. Unfortunately, there weren't many of us.
Yeah.
And that's a real challenge for us, I think.
That's a really good point. I think that's accurate. I think people get attracted to the shiny things and the trendy things, right? And everybody, talks about which booth had the best swag, right? There's always that. And everybody's so against socks, but actually I forgot to pack socks the one year. And so I was like, wait, I know I can get socks here somewhere. And it's true. I got 3 pairs. But I think too, if you do want to go to the conference and do the showing up in certain places thing and the, rubbing elbows with certain vendors thing, like, do that and get paid for it too. Like, that's what I would encourage people to do, is find a vendor who will sponsor you to go, find someone who will pay you to hang out in their booth, right? Because the influencer market is in L&D as well, right? And so if you can get somebody to sponsor you, if that's what you want to go for anyway, if you want to go to like, oh, I'm posting this to LinkedIn, or I'm doing a YouTube live, or I'm, streaming from the tape, see if somebody will sponsor you, get paid for it,
Or at least get your costs covered. I mean, I think
exactly. Have them pay your way.
This is it might be a good time actually to switch over a little bit, because I thought it would be nice to talk a little bit about that gap between wanting to and being able to speak at events. And to be clear, like, this is not first of all, do you really want to do it? It's always I think some people think there's this incredible new frontier of their career that will unlock the minute they step onto a conference stage, mostly. And, I'll show much I love it's tremendous fun. It's absolutely fantastic experiences doing it. But it's a lot of work. And you are very, very rarely at an industry conference, you are unlikely to ever be paid to speak. Very unlikely.
Yes.
A couple of community conferences will do things like a profit share. So if the event makes a profit, you'll get a percentage of it as a speaker. There are a handful, usually non-L&D conferences, that occasionally get an L&D person in, like business conferences might give you some kind of fee or might cover your costs. But a lot of the time when you see people speaking at a conference, they have not been paid to be there. Their total, remuneration is a ticket to the event. which
Yes.
is fantastic if you're going anyway. But if you otherwise aren't interested, it's a bit of a nothing burger. They've probably had to pay their own travel and accommodation and food
Right.
costs. Like for me,
Right.
speaking at conferences on the balance sheet is a cost. It
Of
is,
course.
you know.
Yes.
So I think that's something to
Yes.
bear in mind. And then why is it you want to speak? What is it you have to share? Because we don't need any more people jumping on the stage with a sales pitch. If your thing is it will unlock new clients for me, or I've got a new product to sell, you're gonna. My view is you'll struggle to get on the stage. People are kind of wise to it.
Sure.
But I'd be
Sure.
interested, Heidi, from your perspective, what are kind of the things that when you're thinking about what you'll speak to and how you'll pitch it? What sort of process do you go through? How do you decide, is there a talk in this or not really?
Well, like I said, it's hard for me to say because I've never actually had my talks accepted to conferences. So I can't really say how I would prepare or what I would speak to. Like, I don't think I'm a good person to ask this question, honestly,
That's
Tom.
fair enough.
I don't think I have good advice to give.
What do you look for then? Because you certainly attend conferences.
That's a good question. I think I look for at this phase in my career, I look for either something that's like completely new to me, right? So sometimes it will be those trendier things, right, that have to do with tech, where it's something that's completely foreign to me, where I'm like, I have no idea what this even means. Let me go check this out. Or on the other end, the thing where it's like, oh, this is really nerdy and I feel like I'm going to get something out of this. So like the super advanced content, but I find that like that's partially why it's so easy for me to attend so few sessions, is because I find a lot of that content is for like the in-betweener and like, the person with like 6 months to 3 years experience. And that's just not like where I'm at anymore. So like a lot of kind of those mid-level, like, we're going to teach you a new way to do needs analysis. Well, I know 563 ways so far. So what's one more going to add? But I think you're right about being able to tell whether someone's authentic or not. I think the other thing too is, I don't know if this is a problem over there, but over here we get a problem with like the same people giving the same talk at every conference all year long for the last 10 years. And it's very like, and new people will kind of buy into it and be like, ooh, and they get a little like starstruck and fangirly, and they'll attend those sessions. But I find that even those sessions aren't as well attended more recently, because it's kind of like, I think people like the shiny stuff, but I think people also want to hear from practitioners and like people that are encountering these, what's the word I'm looking for? Like these complex problems, right? And these complex issues.
I think for me, the biggest things that I see, and because I believe that the topic is almost irrelevant, if I'm honest. When I think about like the sessions from the last year that I really go, wow, that stuck with me, they are on, like you say, everything from a piece of technology through to a way of thinking about something. One was about framing questions in certain languages. One was about dealing with sort of cross-cultural teams. They stood out not because of what the topic was and how relevant that was to me at the time, though they were relevant to me at the time, that's always important, but the person on stage was not speaking to their own peer group. They were deliberately saying, I am an expert, or I know a lot in this, so I am going to try and share this with people who do not have that. That is, to me, that is the crux of what can you do that with? You need to be at the level where you can say, we never use the word teach, but it is teaching. It is teach. I can teach this. I can impart this knowledge, this experience, these insights to a group of people who otherwise lack for them. That it should be the starting point. And then what is your story? What story do you have to tell around this point? Because if you haven't got one, you haven't got a talk. I don't care how good you are at it. Most most conferences and most conference talks that are run by an expert with no practical experience and no stories to tell suck. Because that is just back to school teaching. Have you ever used this? No. Why would I use it? It's enough to simply know it. It's like, great. Right you are, sir. I'll write it down 3 times, cover it up and see if I can remember it. Is that right? We don't need that. And the third thing actually has nothing to do with your content, nothing to do with your story. Learn to present. And to be clear, I don't mean train, I don't mean facilitate, I don't mean run a meeting. I mean learn public speaking. It is a skill, and it's a really difficult skill.
I think that's one of my biggest frustrations in not having talks accepted is that I spent 10 years doing theater and doing, singing on stage in front of everyone in my damn town. Like, I'm ready. Sign me up, and the storytelling that goes along with that and the monologues, practicing your monologue in front of the mirror for hours.
This is, and it's interesting because the number of sessions that I granted, I have changed the hat by which I attend sessions because now I'm often scouting for, could this person be a good speaker? The answer is immediately no when someone walks on stage and goes, hello, my name is da-da-da, and I work here as this and blah, blah, blah. And today I'm going to share with you. So, oh my God, it's the learning objective slide. Like, you've just done that, but as a person. This is shocking.
Yes, it's true. It's true.
Yeah. What if TV shows started like that? Hello, I'm Tom, and my character today will be this, and the program will be covering the following items. No. You start with an explosion. You start with, Rocky coming through something, or Rambo probably coming through a big thing of flames, or whatever. You start with something that people.
Walk-up song.
Yeah, you give people something right out of the gate. You start. There's a really great YouTube video called "The Art of Stage Presence." It's the thing that I give everyone whenever they tell, "How do I get?" You watch that. You watch that, and it's got 2 of my favourite kind of stage presenters in the world in it. Basically just teaching stage presence for like a 2-hour video. It's absolutely fantastic. And the whole crux of it is you start strong. You step onto the stage, your talk has started the minute people look to you. And if they don't immediately look to you, you've already messed up. You shouldn't be relying on someone to go, and here's a really jumbled, awkward intro of you stood to the side being talked about third party. That's horrible. And you shouldn't need them to know who you are. No one in that room is there to get to know you. No one gives a crap that my name's Tom and that this is my job title and that this is my company. They're here for whatever the title was. So give them that straight out. Give them the thing, because that's what they're going to remember, right? You walk on stage and you say, more than half of you really don't want to be here. Everyone is going to lean in. Everyone is going to be interested. I saw it absolutely. I'm tempted to nick it, but I don't know enough about it. I was watching a presenter whose name I can't remember, and they were introduced, and they sat there and went, so right now, this is, and they talked about they took the whole list of like chemicals that were going on in their body and brain. What I mean by that was that was incredibly embarrassing to hear third party myself be introduced. But that's also what happens in your people's brain when you tell them it's time to do a role play in the classroom. And it was that kind of like, this is an amazing. We've in like 30 seconds we had a little bit of science, a clear demonstration of expertise, a link from an awkward beginning straight into the content they were there to talk about. No idea what their name was. Nice. Can't even remember that now. Sure. But I can remember their session. I can remember the takeaways.
You remember the session. Yeah.
This is it. This is so important. And yet every freaking session starts with, hello, I'm so-and-so, I'm the head learning person in blah, 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 and I'm going to share a little bit about how we did this and how we did that. My slides moving. Can everyone see my slides? Sorry, the text, you don't have to read them. It's
to the audience and starts clicking into the slide that has a bunch of text. It's a BI dashboard, but wait, there's an iceberg.
This is it. Or the classic, don't worry, you can't read anything on the slide, but you don't need to. Then why the fuck is the slide on the screen? If no one needs to read it, then get rid of it. Look, my point is, you don't have to be exactly that, but you do need to learn to present. And present in a public speaking sense, not in terms of a classic L&D presentation. Because there is a big difference. You are on a stage. Yes, you are imparting knowledge. You could argue you're training or teaching or however you want to word it, but the format is different. And just as we change things from when we're training in a training room to when we're delivering e-learning to when we're doing something like this, we have got to adjust our delivery. I know I went on for a little bit then, but it's one of those things. Because also, what's holding me back from being selected as a speaker? It might be one of those things. Now, the other thing is, how do you get to do that before you get to speak? Obviously, you get on the internet. Like, the last week, I've probably spent 25, 30 hours trawling LinkedIn, blog sites, professional websites. At one point, I was just trawling through big companies like people rosters they have, looking for who their senior L&D people were, and then trying to find them on the internet.
Okay.
Because, often when it's events that look for speakers, we are looking for evidence that this person, one, has expertise that we're interested in, and two, looks like they can present.
Sure.
And there are a lot of people who have the expertise, but very few people with evidence available that shows me they can present. Which means I have to be willing to take a gamble to get the expertise but no proof of presentation skills. This could go either way. For all I know, I'm inviting Milton to come and take the mic. Right. Yeah, and perhaps I'll hedge. I'll have two speakers, or there'll be a panel, or there'll be a round table, or whatever. But 9 times out of 10, if you've got some evidence of ability to present a video, a podcast, or whatever, attach that, make that visible, because that gives them some certainty of, oh no, this person's not going to freeze up. They've done this kind of thing before, even if it's not a conference. And the list is kind of endless, right, of what you could do. But I think those are the things that I've realised that I find myself looking for. It's that combination. And it is a difficult combination. And I think it's more often than not, it's the presentation skills that either aren't demonstrated or are fundamentally lacking, I found.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And there's not really a good reason for it either.
I don't know.
There isn't.
Go on, you go.
Well, I guess I would argue that if you have the expertise but you don't have the presentation skills, that the conference may not be the venue for you to share that information.
Yes, yeah, and that's fine. And so,
I'm not saying that they don't have the expertise.
Yes,
I'm just saying that I know of people who, like myself, consistently get turned down from conferences, who can speak, who can tell a story, who have the presence, who don't get nervous, who, and who also have the expertise, but they just continually get passed over because, like, the thing you said about like risk, I think is one thing where they're like, oh, well, these people are too opinionated, or they come off, kind of difficult or whatever. But see, to me, that's an excuse though. And I know you don't do this, but to me, that's an excuse because I literally sat there and heard, what was it? One of the keynotes at DevLearn say the R word in front of God and everybody. And those people are not like your regular, they're not chosen, like the rest of the session speakers, right? Like those are special keynote. So if you are going to put forth the risk to let those types of people speak and then shit like that happens, then you can have a few people with some hot takes present as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is very difficult because I think, and that's a good example of where it's which conferences. So like there are a list of conferences that I have never and will never be invited to speak at, ever. I know that, and I am yes, totally agreed. Fine with that. That's there because there are decisions you can make, right? And if you want to be Like, if you want to stand a chance of being invited to everything all the time, everywhere, I don't think you can quite do that. But you get all the big ones, let's say, you do need to be like advertiser safe, to use like a YouTube term, right? You need to be fairly vanilla, pretty bland, strong opinions, but not strong opinions that might be against anyone else's strong opinions. You have to choose very carefully what to be vocal about. I can't do that. I don't think I'm like physically capable of not sharing an opinion if I think it's right, or even if I'm not too sure.
But I also just think that there's no perspective there. Like, I find that vanilla people lack perspective.
I do think it depends, because I know some people that I had always perceived to be very vanilla people. Then I met them in person, away from the conference setting, and they weren't. Like, it for them, it's a business decision. In order to be able to, secure positions and to work in the world in which they work. Prime example was I was chatting with some people who they work in the civil service. They work in government. They have to be vanilla. They're not in private. Of course they're not. They're normal human beings. If anything, they're more explosive in private because they've bottled it all up from everywhere else in their lives. But a civil servant can't publicly be like, well, this idiot over here is doing this, and they have to do it. And I think that's more true than we'd like to admit in a lot of corporate L&D jobs as well. If in a lot of corporates, they want vanilla people, and that's not universally true, to be entirely clear, but it is true of some organizations. And for those people, is it worth blowing up your career or possible advancement in the future to speak at a conference? No, probably not. Or to be, out there and a bit on the edge? Probably not. And there are events where I know that's more or less what they want, and that's fine. And I'll probably not be invited to a lot of those events, and that's okay too.
Sure.
There are also events where there is a clique. There is the same group of people making the decisions every single year. Unlikely to be invited there. That's fine.
Right.
Similarly, do I want to be on that stage? If that's the perception I have of that event, is it not better to say that's not for me and instead look at smaller events and to find the events that do match who I am and pursue opportunities in those? That's what first took me to the Learning Network. It's what attracts me to World of Learning and events like there's the Business of Training conference here in the UK that focuses on people who deliver training as their business. Those are much more my spaces than, for instance, Learning Technologies. It is the biggest event in the UK, both in terms of conference and the expo, but it's not really for me. And that's okay. And that means that it's not a stage I'm going to be on, but equally, is it a stage that I want to be on? Probably not. It's probably not my audience. It's probably not going to bring a lot of value to me to speak there. World of Learning, much more my thing. Less technology focused, more focused on as the name learning suggests. That's fine. Smaller regional events. When I spoke at Andrew's event at the start of this year, I spoke on how to choose the right microphone for your podcast. Now, it was fantastic. It was like, I made joke that it's the first time I've ever been on stage and spoke about something that I'm actually qualified to speak about. I have actual paperwork proving that I know about microphones. Look at that. It's the first time in my career it's been truly useful. But
oh my goodness,
this is the thing, that like choosing the right event has a lot to do with that. And I think often it's all trade-offs. It's all trade-offs, of course it is. And it's how much do you want to compromise what you really think in order to be on someone else's stage. And if the answer is I don't, the answer may be build your own stage. And that's how you end up starting IDTX.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's why these smaller regional events almost always get founded by someone who is quite strongly opinionated and who wants to see a certain thing on the stage that they're not otherwise seeing. So I think, there will, wherever you live in the world, be events. Find those and see if there's opportunities there.
Yeah, and I think to really remember, because this was something I had to remind myself when I was newer, because I got kind of like spun up in doing a lot of work for exposure, right? And that's how it kind of ended world up in the conference world anyway. And what I really had to realize is that like outside of our little L&D bubble, nobody knows who these people are. Nobody gives a shit about any of us, right? Like nobody knows who Dr. Heidi Kirby is outside of, my small network of people in the learning industry. Like my friends like make fun of the fact that I have my doctorate in real life. They're like, what a nerd this lady is, So I think just remembering that like we're all people and that nobody is the Julia Roberts of L&D, and there isn't one.
This is it. Like I always kind of like, I like to stab a little bit of fun at ourselves when we all gather. Like it helps. I think that my other hobby does conventions as well. Like I collect toy soldiers and we paint them at our desks, and then we gather and then we lay them all out on the table and we fight each other with dice. It's all very exciting and very grown up, of course. There's never any kind of pew pew sounds at all. Fantastic. No, they're not. They're not toy soldiers. They're wargaming miniatures. And we gather in big convention halls and we hang out for the day. And you can't help but somewhat poke fun at yourself. You take yourself too seriously, it's not good for you. I think it's the same in L&D. When someone, like as you say, there are big names in our industry, but there are big names in our industry. No one else in my family has any idea who these people are, nor do they have any interest in understanding what they do or what they know or how they share it, because it's not their world, right? When we are not an industry of footballers and pop stars and all this kind of thing. We teach people stuff within the very narrow confines of the workplace. It's just not. It's not that fancy at the end of the day. It's cool and it's exciting. It's good to be passionate about it. What we do is worth doing. But it's not a celebrity breeding industry. If that was your goal, as celebrity, you have chosen the wrong career path, I am afraid.
What do you mean? We're streaming on 3 platforms right now, Tom, and we've got like 15 people watching us talk.
This is it. It's to be honest, I hear 15 and I go, 15 people. If that was in person, I'd want to leave. That's so that's fine. They're very good. Q. ID is captivating work. It is indeed. Oh dear.
Speaking of captivate.
Yes, yeah, indeed. We've got like 8 minutes to.
I know.
We'll just do a little bit on conferences.
8 minutes left. Yes.
So we did want to talk about some techie bits, but tech stuff then. Shall we? You messaged me earlier this week. Yeah, it was this week, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Because you saw a little bit about what's going on over at Dashibo, and the language that's being used, I think, right now in tech in our industry is I think it's being deliberately used to sound very exciting. So do you want to talk a little bit about what you've seen?
Yes. So I was reading all these like, oh my God, Docebo has announced this like groundbreaking news, and I looked it up and I looked into it, and it was like they kind of like combined their platform into like an LMS HR all in one, and with AI integrated, right? But with like MCP, and then that was like the first time I heard this little this week jargony phrase MCP, and then I heard it from 2 other founders in the same week, and I was like, hold on a minute. What is this? And so, Tom, do you know what MCP is?
Sadly, yes. My days as a product manager. So what we're looking at is the Model Context Protocol. Basically, it's a special kind of software that acts as a go-between between your data and an AI. Ta-da!
That's what I thought it was, but I wasn't sure. And I was like, oh, I didn't have time to look it up.
Yeah.
But that's literally what I thought it was. It's, just connecting your tool to other software. And so LMSs and authoring tools are now using it to allow you to use your AI of choice, your GPT of choice within that tool or within that software. That's literally all it is. It's not special. I mean, is it? Well, no, it's.
I guess it's simultaneously
it's a great technology.
Yes, there we go.
It's a fantastic technology, but it is going to be table stakes in 2 weeks for every platform to have it. If it's not already table stakes today.
We were doing this 2 years ago. Like 2024, Anthropic basically created this because there was a problem. So this is interesting. So impactful learning. Sorry, I don't know your name, but your post name has come up. So like the other end of an API. So kind of. So if you imagine like APIs allow you to literally just pass information back and forth. What this does is effectively act as like a space for explaining information in a way that an LLM can understand, because otherwise it would kind of look at a Word document and go, I don't know what that is. It needs to do some conversion work, right? So this is how these platforms are saying, hey, install this and the AI can search all your content, all your data, all your this that you put on the platform, and then use it to build a course or answer a question or give you advanced insights. So it's like an API, but it is distinctly different from an API. Okay. But it is specific about these AI tools. Very specific, because it's that context. It's, sure. As the name suggests, it's providing the context that an LLM needs to understand the data you're giving it at a very basic level. The important thing was that it was an open standard. So when Anthropic made it, they basically said, this will work with all AIs, at least in the current world. So it's not just for their tools, and that was quite a big deal, as it were. But yeah, I think the important thing is to know that, like, if someone's got, we've got MCP, that's like saying we've got JavaScript. I don't care. That doesn't help me from a learning perspective, and as always, I get a little bit frustrated when companies use these words because they know they sound impressive, they know they sound exciting, and they know that when we hear MCP, what they're really saying is AI, but they know we don't want to hear AI shouted at us, so now it's MCP. We've got MCP. Have you got MCP? Who cares? Does it work? When I need to do X, Y, and Z, can your platform do it? Yes or no? I don't care about the underlying technology, actually, as long as it's safe, secure, and reliable. That's it. So that was why this frustrated me as much as it did when you sent it to me, because it's just like, more of this, really?
Well, and it feels too like there's obviously a lot of competition in the vendor space right now because anybody can do anything overnight now. And people are, right? We see new companies, I get DMs, I'm sure you do too, to check out this new product. I'll give you a free trial of this, L&D product I vibe coded over the weekend while in Maui with my suntan and my margarita, it's getting out of hand, right? And I have very big opinions that AI has caused a sort of mass delusion, not just in the corporate workspace, but in like the greater world, by like hyping people up and like unequivocally telling people that their ideas are good and smart and brilliant. And it's giving people this very false sense of success. And like these very false like dopamine hits. And I think that we're seeing a lot of that. I'm seeing a ton of that all over all my social media, including LinkedIn, where I'm just like, this is the stupidest take on L&D that I've ever seen. And it has 200 likes. And am I living in the twilight zone? Right. But I think for this specifically, it's like that people kind of feel that they're losing the part of the market share that they were hoping to corner because of the competition. And instead of doing marketing correctly, and instead of kind of strategizing and really taking time to do it properly, they're kind of jumping on this, well, let me just ask Claude what it thinks. That's why you get so many posts that also say, get rid of your SMEs and get our tool. Because to Claude, it's like, oh, this is the best way to broaden your audience, without realizing it'll alienate the audience you already have, right?
I mean, it sounds real old-fashioned, but like human connection. Like, ideas are best judged by other human beings, and you've got to get some around you that will turn to you and say, Tom, that's a fucking bad idea. Like, not just not great, that sounds awful. And if you do that, you're gonna look like an idiot. The people I have around me that are willing to do that are the most valuable people in my life and in my career. And it is essential that you get yourself some if you don't have any. Because ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, I don't care which one you use, they are not ever going to tell you that honestly. They are never going to look you in the eye and go, oh, don't do that. Do not do that, or you're wrong. Because sometimes, it doesn't matter how long you've done something or how clever you think you are, you say stuff that's going to make you sound stupid if you say it to too many people out loud, and you need someone who you can trust to pull you aside and say, you need to stop saying that or stop doing that because this is what's going to happen. It's really important, and it's got to be a person. And there will be people who are willing to do that for you, but probably not as many as we all need. We could all do with more people willing to do that. That's what your real friends will do for you, and it's what AI cannot do for you. I found it, as you said, to be a horrendous judge of the value of ideas.
Oh, terrible.
But, well, on that bold and uplifting note, well, we'll go bold and uplifting of human connection. It's really important.
Yes.
Find yourself some great people to challenge you and talk to you. And then find other people that love everything you say, because you need some of those too. But they're easier to find, especially if you employ people. They think your ideas are fantastic. Or just speak to a parent or close relative. They always love your ideas. Get that approval from them, not from an AI, and find some other people to challenge you on everything you say. Amazing. Well, Heidi, thank you so much for joining us for this hour.
Thank you.
As always. Yeah, it's been a blast as always, and all the ideas were yours this time. So that's made my life very easy.
And we probably won't be here next month, right? Because of the IDTX conference, correct? So you probably won't see us again till June.
This is it. We will be skipping May because May is just conference heavy. But if you are coming along to IDTX in May, please do say hello. Obviously, I would love to see many of you there. It's going to be fantastic. There's a stand-up comedy show at the end of the day now at the pub, which is going to be fantastic, which is delivered by a chap called Nikita. He's a workplace psychologist. He has a comedy show that's been to the Edinburgh Fringe the last few years, all based around personality. And personality testing. So it's going to be a fantastic day. Hope to see you there. If not, Heidi, where can people find you in the next month?
You can find me on LinkedIn or Substack, and that's all I'm doing for the month of May. So that's kind of nice.
Excellent. Well, as always, if you want to reach out to either of us, please do so. If there's stuff you want to see discussed on a future show, let us know. It's always better when we can discuss the things that you're interested in. But with that, until next time, have an amazing month, and we will see you in June.